What's up, folks? This is Dan from Discern. Before I get started with this review, just a reminder, we're about 50% of the way through the Kickstarter campaign to fund another year of reviews on this channel. If this thing we got going here is going to continue as is, or if it ever has any hope to expand, we're going to have to hit that campaign goal. So please, for those of you who are fans or subscribers to this channel, I'm asking for your help. Please support and give to the campaign with whatever you can. I really do appreciate each and every one of you and your support. Thank you. All right, these are my thoughts on the new track from Audrey Assad, Midwinter. Audrey Assad is a singer-songwriter dabbling in indie and alternative pop, folk rock, and contemporary stylings of classical works and hymns. She's an artist with a sonic style similar to artists like Latifah Phillips from Page CXVI, Brooke Frazier, or even Fernando Ortega, who she has worked with before. She released her debut album in 2010, but she actually really released some of her first music in 2008. Earlier this year, 2016, she released the album Inheritance, her fourth studio album. An album which I think is one of the best of the year. I actually talked about it on this channel when it came out. Check the link on the screen or in the description box below. I was amazed at the new age and sort of neoclassical approach she took to a handful of timeless hymns. She produced a reverence and a weight in the arrangements that I think the songs really deserved. And since the release of that album, about 9 months ago, she released a deluxe version with mostly some live session recordings of a few of the songs, but no big signs of the next thing to come. Not that there's any rush, obviously. I mean, she did just release a whole 40-plus minute album. But recently she has been releasing some Christmas tunes, 3 songs in fact, and she actually just bundled them into what looks like a little EP called Winter. These songs all sort of released in such fast succession, it was hard to tell, what they were leading up to before it suddenly all came together, and apparently it's a new EP. The 3 songs released so far are Winter Snow, which is her version of a Chris Tomlin song from 2009, which she was the featured vocalist on. This track, is not much different from the Chris Tomlin version from a distance, considering she was the defining characteristic of that original song anyway. The second song, the one I'll be diving into, is called Midwinter, and the third track, Song for a Winter's Night, is a cover, the original being from the folk and country artist Gordon Lightfoot back in the 60s. So let's take a look at that second track, Midwinter. Before we get into the song from Audrey Assad, I sort of need to take you back into history for a moment, because as with the other 2 Christian/winter songs, she recently released, this too is not an original song. The lyrics of this song find their genesis in a poem called In the Bleak Midwinter from the 1860s or 1870s from Christina Rossetti. This poem was then turned into a Christmas carol and a hymn of the same name in the early 1900s. And in the more than 100 years since, this hymn has not been lost to history. It is still sung today, and even was featured in some recent period pieces on TV and in movies. Audrey Assad's arrangement of this song stays mostly true to the original melody and sort of the framework of this hymn. The vocal melody is about the same, and the lyrics and the verses mostly the same as well. She did add a bridge, which is sort of the dynamic apex of this arrangement, but mostly these songs, keep the traditional and classical shape of the hymn, but it sort of adorns it with modern styles and instruments. Through Audrey Assad's handful of past releases, I noticed that she has a magnificent gift of creating a captivating and almost mesmerizing mood with her music. And that feeling is no different on this song. Lingering reverb on the vocals, a warm blanket of ambience and just a sense of space, gentle but not timid performances from the instruments, just an overall softness and just flowing silkiness that permeates this song. The musical landscape is an incredible balance of like flawless purity and flawed authenticity. I mean, the mix has been sanded around the edges. Any possible burr or point has been filed down. It's just been streamlined to flow delicately without hindrance. But the recordings, the raw performances, have not been stripped of their humanity or craft. You can hear nuance and musicality in every corner. I mean, the electric guitar, the vocals, the piano, the bass, and the drums, even in the background glow sort of the roomy ambience. And the recording just moves and breathes, even featuring some moments of vocal flair, the oohs and the ahs and whatnot. It ventures up into almost voice-cracking falsetto as well, like toward the end of the song, where her voice, nearly disappears into the clouds for a moment. And the electric guitar, the sort of the instrumental centerpiece of the song, is the most, recognizable character in this musical piece. Ranges from bluesy and clean at the intro to buzzing and with fervent energy and sparking electricity in the bridge. Now, beyond the sort of trappings of the instruments and the recording, the foundation of this song, I think, is the beautiful simplicity and timeless melodic framework of the old hymn. The songwriting from a hymn like this is so structurally sound and complete. It's a melody that resolves marvelously and becomes calmingly circular, as if it could continue on and on, just another verse and another verse. I mean, the skeleton of each verse, as if the words are sort of the skin and muscle, the skeleton is the same throughout the song because it's a strong skeleton. And each verse can be taken in a wide variety of lyrical directions or dynamic variances or instrumental focal points that can change. I mean, just whatever best fits the arrangement's intent. But this is only possible because of the strength of the songwriting of this hymn. And I think Audrey Assad lets the original flavor of this hymn come through strongly. And like on her album Inheritance earlier this year, she displays a great balance of layering on top of an already written song, but not overdoing it in a way that smothers or drowns the original piece. It's almost like her additions are just spices that accentuate the taste of the original song rather than overpower it. And in regards to the lyrics here, I mean, there isn't much I can say about Audrey Assad's contribution, obviously. I mean, she didn't write these verses other than tweaking a few lines to read a little differently. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about the lyrics, obviously. She did add a short little bridge section, which I believe is her original lyrics. The song as a whole is a look into the incarnation of Christ and the unfathomable contrast of the Son of God becoming a lowly infant, the Creator stepping into his creation. And the verses are painted with a lot of chilly, frigid, and lifeless pictures representing the creation, in particular the specific place of Christ's birth, representing it as this bleak midwinter. The creation is the middle of winter. It's the farthest time away from warmth of the whole year. Everything is frozen over. Everything is frigid. And into that landscape, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And the verses continue on with a deeper reflection on the apparent worth of this fallen world, that Christ would enter into it, that he would see worth in it and live and die to rescue it. This is where the second verse picks up with lines that set up a view of the majesty of Jesus, the Son of God, and then contrast that with the humble state of the incarnation. It's as if Jesus is at the center of our view, and we're asked to reconcile the seemingly unreconcilable, that the one whom angels worship, angels, who men in the Bible had to be reminded not to worship because of their glory compared to us. Those angels worship the eternally glorious one, Jesus. And that Jesus is then pictured laying in a bed of dirty, ordinary hay, a bed for animals, and living dependent on his mother's milk. And instead of being worshipped in the presence of angels, he's surrounded by livestock. To see those two images of Christ is the staggering reality that this song is rooted in. And the bridge that Audrey Assad added, which comes right after this second verse, is another strong punch to drive this reality home. The lyrics, very short and sweet, say that that this fallen world and us who live in it was enough for Christ to come and redeem it. This fallen world filled with fallen people, fallen because of sin and rebellion toward God, was somehow, through miraculous grace, the object of God's redemptive love. And even though the phrase "it was enough," or even "we were enough," which I think she sings as well, can initially come off as, disgustingly prideful or self-centered, it isn't if you can keep the context of this song in view, keep the message of the gospel in view, because in doing so, you recognize our unworthiness and our absolutely not enoughness that we can offer God. And in our state of being destitute, he didn't lie to himself and say, they aren't that worthless. I see a little worth in them. I see a little enough in them. No, all he saw is people who spurn his glory at every turn. And he said, I will save that. I will save them. I will forgive them. I will transform them and take from them a heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. And that leads us into the last verse, which is another 1800s original. Audrey took some minor artistic license and word adjustments, but for the most part, it's true to the original poem. And while I know it seems silly to critique a poem from a woman who's been dead for over 100 years, I have to say this is my least favorite verse. And the reason for that is how much this verse tends to deflate the grandeur described in the verses before. The whole song was this wide-eyed, mouth agape stare in awe at the incarnation, as I've been talking about. The subject of this whole song or poem in its original context has been on the person and birth of Christ. And in his exaltation and in his praise, we, the listeners or readers, find ourselves moving beyond our self-focused minds and drawn to a heavenly reality, seeing the spiritual reality behind the physical facts of Christ's birth. And we've sort of lost ourselves in these previous verses. But in the final verse, the last statement these lyrics really have to make, this last verse, completely brings us back down to earth, brings us back into the picture, which can be grounding and helpful in some ways. But I think it sort of slows down the energy, it dims the gloriously bright lights, and ends with a look at ourselves, who are the least glorious character in this story. And what ends up sort of ringing in your ears as the song fades out is, I will give my heart. It's sort of that call to action, or that gentle nudge, reminding us that we're part of the story too, in the sense that God did not come to rescue sinners in a storybook, in a fairy tale. He came to save sinners in real time and space. He came that you and I may have eternal life. So this last verse is, like a snap back to reality. And for that, I really appreciate it. But I think I get tripped up by just the mere thought of giving anything to God, let alone the sappy and sort of cute sentiment of giving your heart. I think just my reformed spidey senses go off thinking, whoa, I don't give anything to God. He's fully sufficient in himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, in complete and perfect supply, lacking nothing, needing nothing. And in the context of this song, thinking about how great his love was for us, that he desired to save a fallen world, I think it's detracting to try and cap that with the sentiment that he gave so much, so therefore I will give what I have. I totally understand that sentiment, a heart filled with grateful love toward God for what he has done and wanting to show or give that love in return. But personally, I look at what these verses are saying, I look at what Christ has done, and I look at my heart and think, what a mess of a heart it is. And I think, you want these filthy rags? I mean, I think my heart is nothing to God. It's not of worth or value to a holy, righteous God. And beyond even my heart, I mean, I have nothing to give him, nothing at all. But yet he called me. Yet he desired to save me. He forgave all my sin and created a new heart within me. So instead of thinking what I will give him, as this last verse speaks to, I lean more towards dwelling on the fact that I gave him nothing upon nothing. In fact, I sinned against him and hated him. That's really, if anything, that's what I gave him. And yet he took my sin, he took my punishment, and gave me grace upon grace. There are some links in the description box below for you to hear this track. You can also hear the other Christmas/winter singles I mentioned. Just follow that Spotify link below and you'll be right there to check out all those other songs. Despite my thoughts on this last verse, I love this track. I really do. Highly recommended that you give it a listen. I've also put a link to Audrey Assad's Twitter in the description below in case you're interested. And with that, thank you so much for watching this track review. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. New track reviews just like this one release every Wednesday, and new album reviews release every Friday. If you have a question or a comment for me about this track, about my thoughts about this track, or about something else, you can comment below this video. You could tweet at me at discernreviews, or you could send me an email, discernreviews@gmail.com. And just a final reminder about the Kickstarter campaign for this channel. At the time of this video, we're about 50% of the way through the campaign, but we haven't hit our goal yet. So please follow the link below, check it out. Give what you can, to keep this channel going for another year. Hours of content for just a few bucks. So it's a pretty good deal, I think, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for watching this review. I hope this helps. See ya.